Welcome in, everybody. It's another edition of Thursday Live Chats. And we are excited to be back. And actually, it is the first time that I am coming to you from our headquarters here in Vancouver, British Columbia. A brand new studio kind of set up. It looks pretty similar to my old studio. The little green screen behind me makes it look nice and crystal clear. It looks like it could be anywhere. But I'm excited to be right here for this live chat. It's kind of a special edition. I'm all about, being honest and full disclosure here. We had a guest kind of lined up and we were scheduled and we moved and it started to fall through. And so I gave a call out to our guest and I asked if he could step in kind of on short notice, which I think is going to be for a great conversation because both of us, I don't want to say aren't prepared, but we're just going to go for it because we have done no prep, very little research on either side. And part of the name might be familiar, but if you, by the end of this, you're going to know the whole name for sure. It is Caleb Walker. I hate to always do this, say like son of Bobby Walker, because it's just that little premise there, but that's what we're going to get into. But Caleb Walker, thank you so much for stepping in and joining us here on our live chat.
Of course. Thanks, Sean, for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I hope we can have a good conversation here and get some good knowledge and some advice over to the people watching and listening.
And one thing in particular that I wanted to have you on for, I was actually on the Journey of a New Entrepreneur live stream. We had a giveaway, part of a subscriber special there. And I had mentioned during that I wanted to have you on, and the fill-in element came, from the scheduling side. But what I want to kind of talk about was we actually had an article on our blog, how to thrive as a family business. And the family business dynamic, you see so much of it in home services. And it's very unique from a lot of different angles. And I think in your particular case, add on the fact of what you guys are doing, what your dad's doing with Journey of a New Entrepreneur, but what you're doing as a business that's growing, strong. Just recently, over 500 Google reviews. You guys are really getting after it. Congratulations on that as well.
Thank you.
But I want to talk about it because as in reading that blog, rereading it, it was an interesting perspective because you made the decision to kind of go into the family business at a young age, at a time when you're really trying to figure out what you kind of want to do in general. But also for some people, you might see it as like a stage one. So, 10 years or 15 years down the line, you still have plenty of time left to make a shift. So I was going to go back to the beginning. It was about 17 years old is when, the Walker family, it kind of aligned to start this business. Can you just take me back to that part and just what was happening at the time? What were the discussions like before you finally said, you know what, like we're in it?
Yeah. So kind of how this whole thing started is with my dad. My dad had a corporate job at the time. He was in home security. He had been in middle management, moved around a whole bunch through a whole bunch of company mergers. I had been to 6 high schools at the time. So I had just constantly been moving, and we ended up in Florida. And my dad was getting a little bit sick and tired of what he was doing. Had already mentioned, kind of throughout the years, hey, I want to start a business. I don't know what, kind of never did it. And then we kind of talked about it a little bit. And he said he decided he was going to start one on the side. He said, all right, I'm going to start one on the side. And I'd been hearing him and my mom talk about it. And I approached him and was like, hey, I'd like to do it with you. And so we had a few conversations there, and then shortly after, it's funny. Keith Kalfas, he has a YouTube video, and I forget the name of it, but basically, he walked into Home Depot, went to the window cleaning section, pointed to everything you need, and then said, go. He walked out front, showed the storefront window, showed how much you should price for it, and then he was like, go buy printable business cards and then just go up and down storefronts and say, hey, my name's Caleb. I own a window cleaning company. Can I clean your windows? And so my dad found that video just randomly. And coincidentally, it was the day before he found out he was losing his job through a merger. And so he shows me this video and goes, if I was ever gonna lose my job, this is what we would do until we figured out what's next. Coincidentally, happened the next day. So he picked me up after high school. We went to Lowe's, literally pulled up the video and just picked out everything he grabbed. And that's how I started a business. When we first started, kind of getting into me and him, he played a lot of devil's advocate with me. He was like, is this something you really, really want to do? It's not all fun and games. It's going to be very difficult. Because I'm 17 at the time. I was still in high school, was about to graduate in a few months. He goes, if you start this, he goes, your friends are going to be out going to parties or, going out having a fun time, and you're going to have to work. And that's the sacrifice you're going to have to make if you want to do this. And but I knew how level-headed he was and how he works with things. And I committed to it, and we just jumped in and, nose down, just started grinding through everything. And it's kind of, that's history there. So.
And it's funny you mentioned Keith Kalfas because we were talking about getting him on the podcast. We couldn't get scheduled a line or anything like that. So I'm hoping for an upcoming episode we can get Keith on here. But talking about his, hey, like this is what you buy, and then go and just prove yourself. Like right off the bat, just go represent yourself and prove yourself. I don't know if it's more reasonable for a 17-year-old to be hooked by that. Or a father. And the reason I say is because, there's a gamble at both costs. Your dad was spot on of, you're probably going in a different direction than a lot of your friends. Were you prior to that? Were you working? Were you part-time job? Like, did you have interest in either, the trades or labor? Like, was this something, like an entrepreneurial spirit already within you at that age?
I would say yes. There's a little bit of uncertainty on what I wanted to do. But I had already kind of decided before the business that I was going to go to school and get a business degree. That was kind of where my mindset was at the time. So that kind of, I was already geared towards it, and I saw the opportunity with him. I'm like, let's do this. I was like, I knew my dad. I was like, this guy's got 10 plus years of experience running a service business at a very, very high level. And I was like, what better person to learn from than him? And, what a better opportunity. We at the time we were going over, rough numbers, very, and probably inaccurate numbers at this point, of where we could end up if we really stuck with this and committed to it. And I saw the very big potential. I saw me working really, really hard, and 2 or 3 years from now, being very, very far ahead of people my age. And then to kind of go into what you said with, what was going on in my life at the time. I was, full-time high school student. I had a part-time job. I worked at Firehouse Subs. That's how I paid for insurance for my car and, fund money, things like that. Mm-hmm. And I worked there a lot. I worked on average on a short week for me would be at least 10 hours. I worked usually 20, 25-hour weeks, plus going to school, Firehouse. So there was that already conflict there. It kind of worked out well that my friends worked with me at the time. So I was able to kind of get that social aspect. But as soon as I stepped out from Firehouse, which was about 2 months in, became very difficult, kind of balancing that social life there. My friends were always doing stuff. I got made fun of for cleaning windows. My friends gave me a hard time. And they were kind of mean, a little bit there. But if anything, it motivated me to keep pushing forward because I knew I was not that far away from being very far ahead of them. So that was kind of where my head was at there. So I just kind of took the leap. I knew that this was going to be something great. If it didn't work out well, I knew it'd be a good learning experience for me and kind of maybe guide me in the direction of where I wanted to be. So
it's such a strong-willed, mentality there, to as you said, if it doesn't work out, you're going to learn something from it and kind of be able to adjust. I was not quite similar, but my family owned a business, a restaurant, Dairy Queen, actually. And I worked it, through middle school, through high school. And had a lot of those, 4th of July weekend or, Canada Day weekend up here in Canada. Like if you were doing that, I was working because everyone, all the other staff, wanted off. And so I was there, your Sunday nights or things like that. So it really instilled with me of, okay, I'm I'm doing these things because I had some extra cash more than some of my friends that weren't working, able to go around. I was learning a lot of great skills that served me, further on, not just business mentality, but even just, hand skills. So whenever you have to take apart a machine or something like that, getting that great going forward. But it's a really hard to balance the social, because there's plenty of times that I wanted to go out and do something or go away for the weekend with friends. And I'm like, well, there's no way, looking at the weather and things like that, that I can leave, the business high and dry. And then graduating high school, going into college, for a lot of people, it's kind of rediscovering themselves again. And now you got to do this in the entrepreneurial setting. Can you talk a little bit about like the business as a classroom? Because the one thing we hear with the family business, and when people start it, whether it's the child or the adult, is they kind of wonder like, well, what are they learning if they get down to the grindstone versus sitting in the classroom? In your experience, what was it like to kind of have that as the classroom?
Frustrating. Very frustrating. Looking at it from where I am now, I wouldn't change a thing. It was great. Going through it all, there was a lot of personal growth for me, and even my business partner and my dad. We had a lot to grow, to change in how we were doing things just between him and I. But me, in high school, I was a very shy person. I really kept to myself. I wasn't a very outgoing person in public places like that. So jumping into the business really forced me to break that. I learned a lot about. I would call it a fear. I had a fear of just talking to people. I'd get really anxious. I would stutter a lot, and just very awkward, very awkward. So jumping into the business and having 2 or 3 weeks in, basically all the way through in, having my dad go, hey, you need to go go door knocking. You need to go door knocking and hand out flyers, and you need to go into storefronts, and you need to get out in front of tons of people every single day and try to make some money. That was terrifying to me. I remember at one point I was in a neighborhood. I was doing flyers. I was handing out flyers by hand, and I legit had to sit down on a bench for like an hour, because I was just so stressed out and freaking my own self out about just walking to somebody's front door and putting a flyer up there. So I had like a lot of internal growing there, and now I don't stop talking. But that's really changed there on that aspect. Maturity wise, it made me grow up, I think, in a lot of ways. I really just jumped right into that adult world when it comes to responsibilities and things. I had a lot of very hard lessons. I had a few sayings that my dad really drilled into my head. One of them was, it's the little things. It's the little things that make us or break us. Me paying attention to every small detail, making sure that I do even the small things that no one sees right, because that small thing impacts everything. And so that was something that was really grinded into my head. Another thing, and I think this may be the biggest one through everything, because we worked about a year, 7 days a week, at least 12-hour days. One of the biggest things was, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. That was probably one of the biggest sayings that he said to me. On the hard days where, I'm dragging, and because I was slow on days, unmotivated, and he's like, hey, if you want to do this, if we want to be successful, it's up to you. This thing isn't going to work unless you want it to work. And so on those 12-hour days, that was what would go through my head. Why am I doing this? What's my why? And that was kind of my mindset there. So I hope that answered the question. I think.
No. Well, for sure. I mean, well, you definitely answered the question. I almost, there's 2 ways I was kind of looking to explore. I'm going to start with one, but I'm going to circle right back. But
sure.
Like, how were you academically as a student through high school and things like that? Were you someone that like could learn in the classroom? Because sometimes I hear with a lot of entrepreneurs, it becomes this awakening of finally I'm learning things in a way that works for me. I'm not an academic, or even sometimes the difference between a creative, versus someone that's a little bit more of a tangible. Like you find your own way through. And so I wondered if it was going into business and kind of, like living that, if it's meant to be, it's up to me sort of deal. Like you're actually putting it right into practice versus like going to the classroom, because your choices were like going to business school. You're going to do a lot of theoretical business, but now you're doing it where the stakes are real. If it fails, it's going to have consequences for your family. I mean, failing classes in college does, but it's not like it's dollars out the window beyond tuition, I guess. So how about academically?
I did pretty well. My parents were very strict when it came to grades. I was like an AB student, always grade, never got in trouble. Just kind of like the average kid there. School kind of came pretty easy to me. I didn't have to do, when I was super young, like when I was super little, complete opposite. But once I figured it out, it came very easy to me, to where like a teacher would be talking and I'd be 5 pages ahead. Like that'd be kind of how it was. They were going too slow for me, so I would read ahead. A lot of the times I'd have things done before they were done giving the whole class instructions. That's kind of how I kind of functioned there. And, I didn't want to waste time. At the time, school was like, it was school. I had to learn it, but I would rather go do other things. So I was ready to, just grind it out, get it done, and be done with it. That was kind of where
I'm assuming you weren't always ahead, just because you said it was 6 different high schools. You weren't just, when you went to a new high school, it was a different part of the curriculum and you would end up ahead, right? Like,
no, I did take a handful of classes over again, because they're like, this credit doesn't transfer, something like that. So, yeah, I had that a lot. Another reason why I was probably that way towards school is, at some schools I had great friends, but there's a few places that I moved to that I didn't want to move. I didn't want to move, so I'd go in with a bad attitude, and so I would just do my schoolwork, just enough to get in and get out. Keep the good grades and get out. So that was kind of where my headspace was. It was a lot of up and down there.
And it's not surprising to me to hear that you were a good student, but I think it might be to some, because they sometimes see the home services or a trade, at least across the population, as like fallback options. And I don't say that in any sort of offensive way, but I know a lot of home services get the back up, because it's not like a fallback sort of thing. You in particular, you made the decision. And then this is where the other part would come to, is like you made the decision to get into it with your dad, which is an interesting scenario, because there's not two ways of grading a human, but there's 2 ways to look at every action you do, in my opinion, in your dad's eyes. How are they doing it? Caleb Walker, who works in this business, and Caleb Walker, who is my son, and is kind of like that. And so even just small little things of how much fun it might look like you're having during a job, a employer might see that as, okay, that's great, they're encouraging like that. But a father might see like, hey, maybe don't slack off as much. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of Did you have discussions before even getting in the business of, hey, like, we had to look at situations like this and situations like that, like what lenses are on when we're looking at a scenario? Was that something that came after you got your legs moving, or was that something, hey, even before we go into this, even before we shake hands here, we need to have this defined?
I'm sure we had a conversation of some sort before, or in those very early talkings of starting it. But a lot of that came after. A lot of figuring those things out. You handle it this way and not that way. And to be quite honest, I'm still learning some of those lessons to this day. On a lot of those things. Specifically, just business situation. A big struggle for me in the business was once we started hiring employees. Because I was in a crew leader position and I had people older than me working for me. And, I'm a little bit of a spitfire in some ways when it comes to, talking. I kind of speak my mind in a lot of ways, so I got caught, saying something I shouldn't, or say, a few things here or there that kind of had to be, resolved, some in a good way, some, hey, you can't do this, some, hey, this was great. I got a handful of those there. What we kind of now have at this point is this is kind of the system we have in place. If it's something little, or if I can get a hold of him, usually I'll reach out and ask a question if I'm not unsure. But he doesn't like to do that in a lot of ways. He likes to let me just do it, and we'll learn from the right or wrong lesson there, because it's the best way to figure it out. Do it yourself, and we'll figure out where you messed up so we can fix it so it's perfect going forward, and allow me to see how I can make those decisions there. So we did that a lot once we got a little bit farther into the business there. But we had some issues off and on there. Especially, I feel like as soon as employees started coming into play was when that really started to, those conversations really started to happen.
And as the dynamic starts to change within the company, you talk about hiring employees, starting to grow and things like that. Was there anything new that you learned about your dad that I don't think maybe you didn't expect, but is there anything that you learned that kind of either gave you a greater, appreciation or greater respect that you don't think you would have seen in a traditional like father-son environment? And why I can't think of the answer I'll give for me was when I worked with my dad, I really started to see how what he was doing was based on kind of like an experience of kind of what he felt, but he did a lot of things with such an openness to learn and improve. And I don't know if I would have saw that in the father-son dynamic right away, because while he was trying to instill like maturity in me, he really couldn't, like open up to that sort of way. So I saw, I got into how he learned more so from working with him than I did being his son. Was there anything similar in your experience?
I think, let me think here. Maybe a little. I've had a very clear idea of how he was. He was a hustler, worked really hard, growing up. And I think this is why probably leaning a little bit more towards the no. I kind of knew how he was for the most part. Cause growing up when he was working in the security business, he would work 7 days a week. I'd see him once a week for 2 or 3 hours, and it'd be 8 o'clock at night, something like that. I very rarely saw him, so I knew how hard he was working. So I kind of had, that mentality there. Comparing back to him and I, seeing it from a different standpoint, he showed a lot of patience, a lot more patience, I think. Maybe not at first, when he was finding that same line there. But he showed he had a lot more patience than I thought he had in some ways. Not all the time. That first year was a little rough. But once we kind of were on, we were both here on the same wavelength. It worked a lot better, I think, there. He had a little bit more patience with me, which is something we usually weren't used to seeing there. So usually it was, do it right, do it the first time, if not, figure it out, kind of thing there. But yeah.
And based on a lot of your answers, it sounds like you guys had a pretty strong relationship prior to going into business. Do you think that was a big leg up for you, or once you got into business mode and how you were treating one another within the business, it really was about the business partnership and not kind of the instilled relationship? Do you think your good relationship prior made you better business partners, or do you think it made it better people, which then made you better business partners?
I think our relationship before it definitely helped. We would have never went into business together in the first place if we didn't have a good relationship.
True. Yeah.
So that was kind of the basics there. He knew how I was, I knew how he was there. He probably knew more on both sides there because at the time I was less mature and kind of figuring things out at the time. But yeah, will you say the question again? I kind of blinked out there. You kind of lost my train of thought.
Honestly, the way I asked it, you didn't blank out, but the way I asked it was a little bit confusing. But what I'm trying to get almost your opinion on was there's some people that say, well, I love my family relationship. I love the relationship I have with my daughter. I love the relationship I have with my son. I love the relationship I have with my mom. So I wouldn't want to jeopardize doing business together because I'm not sure that. But then other people say, well, we had a really strong relationship, but then somehow when we got into like business, it all changed. So what I was asking you is, do you think that you guys just were like, if you were to not be related, you would work well together based on kind of the people you've become, which is obviously shaped by family members? Or do you think that like we kind of had a little bit of an advantage because we already kind of knew and we already kind of understood one
The relationship before made the business. If I wouldn't have been his son, I would have not been a part of the business going through that first year because it was a little rocky. I made some poor decisions. We kind of had each other's throats off and on throughout the thing. And if I was a normal employee, I would have been gone. So kind of, if that answers the question there. So definitely, we definitely work well together. Him and I think very, very similar. I think we have a very similar mindset. And I think that really kind of benefited that there. I don't think if we would have had different mindsets on top of having our little issues here and there, it wouldn't have worked. So definitely the relationship before is a big factor, I think, of going into there. If we wouldn't have had that there, we would have been as close or, in the same kind of mindset there, it never would have happened.
So now your dad went on, he's doing Journey of a New Entrepreneur. He's doing a podcast. He's doing a YouTube. You talked about having to kind of step off and sit on a bench for a little bit to kind of get your anxiety and control of being front and center of that. Seems the opposite with your dad a bit. He seems to not really mind getting out there and going for it. How do you look at that? Because it's like your business partner doing it, but then it's also your dad do it. Like, how have you been taking this all in, the new quest that he's on, so to speak?
I think it's awesome. He loves what he does. He takes great pride in what he does. He loves helping people. Seeing it from my side has been pretty awesome, because in those early videos, I'm in most of them. And if you see me in there, I'm probably not smiling because because he did it just for himself, kind of make like a video diary almost, a journey, seeing where we end up. And he would film me in the morning, right when I'd wake up, we'd be in the truck getting around and I didn't want to be filmed. So at the time, I kind of hated it. I was like, I don't want to be on, I don't want to be in these videos, blah, 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 blah. But now I have a lot of fun in them. But he takes so much pride in it, and it's really cool to see as him being my dad and my business partner, because he has been able to create another business out of it as well. So that's cool, being able to see him make a business out of it, as well as he just started it off doing it as something fun. He did it for himself, and to see how many people wanted to see the story of how everything has kind of grown has been really cool. And see him create this brand. The brand's so him. The brand is just so much him, and it feels like really perfect fit. Seeing that all go down, and kind of expect him to do it for forever now. So,
and I think his passion really shows through it. And so, perhaps that's where his journey kind of goes and ends up. I don't necessarily see you, at least in the front and center way, going that same route. So where do you generally see your goals? I mean, like what is your path, not just short term, but when you look back at a moment when whatever you want finally happened, what does that moment look like? And how do you feel like once you get there? So what is your ultimate goal kind of going forward?
So the main goal kind of I'll answer that in a few different kind of answers there. So the main goal, especially starting the business, was to create this was kind of like the train. This train's going to get me to where I want to be, to where I can then I can have that financial freedom to go put it somewhere that will get me to where I want to be. So, I want to buy some property, so I see myself owning, some property, renting, maybe some like apartment complex. I think real estate's kind of where I'm going to be heading. That's kind of where I want to go. Part of it's kind of unanswered right now. I'm kind of, I have my eyes set out on some goals to work towards, as well as, growing the business, working in the business. So kind of my main focus right now is to keep scaling TRT, keep it growing, and work on some rental properties, some stuff like that on the side to help create some passive income for me. And we'll see kind of where TRT's at in a couple of years from now. Actually, my dad and I have discussed starting another business that I would run, which would be Christmas lights, hanging up Christmas lights here. So that actually might be a possibility. We've talked about that, and I think that might actually be a possibility. So that could be me running everything and being partners with him there, but instead of kind of not necessarily flip positions, because he'll stay in TRT and I'll run this, and he'll be there to help with anything if need be. But that'll be kind of my baby there, and I would grow that. So that might be next, actually, with the property on the side. But long term, I want to have the financial freedom to do what I want, and kind of just do what I want there. So.
Yeah, and I don't mean any negative connotation by this, but would you say you really are looking forward to kind of not like doing it on your own, but talk about like if you went to lights and he kind of stay with TRT, because every success you have, with a business partner, whether it's your dad or whether it's just a regular business partner, I would feel there's always that little itch of like, all right, well, what if it was just me? Do you feel any desire to prove it on your own? I mean, you could be successful with your dad hand in hand and get all the goals you just talked about, but is there an itch to maybe just see if you can do it on your own?
Yeah, a little. That's actually a good question there. There's definitely a big part of me, and I will go do things on my own. But I don't think my relationship working with him will stop. I think I'll always be doing something with him. One, because I truly enjoy working with him. Even though we get our differences and get into little arguments here and there, I enjoy working with him. I enjoy getting to see him. That's always great. And so probably a little bit of both there. I think like looking at the Christmas lights, if we end up doing that, that's kind of like the next big jump for me there. I've grown this with him, kind of shared a little bit. He definitely helped a little bit more on the number side. That was mainly him, all him. Where I provided was the free labor and doing all the hard stuff there so he could focus on not the easy stuff, actually, not even the hard stuff. I'm doing the cleaning and maintenance, things like that. He's doing all marketing stuff there. But I see that Christmas light opportunity there is kind of swapping the roles almost, me really jumping in and doing everything, and then having him just kind of in my corner to help me where needed and guide me. The idea of starting it is terrifying to me, even though I know I can do it. I know it's just here in my head, but I know I can do it. And but it's kind of like Josh Latimer says this a lot: jumping off the cliff and building the airplane on the way down. This is kind of how I look at that there. So yeah, there's definitely some stuff that will happen with him and without him there.
So final question I have for you: if someone was in the position that you were in, they're 17 years old or just at an early stage, and they're thinking about like going into business, and they think they're going to go in with either their mom or their dad, or even just like a cousin, just a family thing. Mm-hmm. What would be your like, hey, the first thing, or it's not going to work unless this. Like, what is that one thing the piece of advice you give? Like, look, if you're going to do business with family, that like either start here or this is the last thing you need to do before you go. Like, what's the one takeaway?
I would say commitment and honesty is probably the biggest one there. If whoever it be, if you're not going to be committed and be honest with yourself on your failures, your success, everything, and whoever it is with you, if they're both not going to do that, then you might as well not try. It's not gonna work out in the long term. It becomes very difficult to run a business with somebody when you're not on the same page with them, and there's different levels there, because then you feel like you can't trust that person, and it just causes problems. So I would say that's definitely one of the bigger ones there, for sure. or probably the biggest one there. Another one is for like saying this to a 17-year-old, they're on the fence about doing it. 100% of the time, every time I'll say do it, because worst thing that happens is that it doesn't work out, and you move on, and you got a good life experience out of it. I would always say just do it, and see how it goes. It's not for everybody. It's definitely not for everybody, but I would say it's always worth a try, and you never know what you're going to get. Now I have from the business, I have this super strong relationship with my dad and my business partner, and it's really cool to see where we're at. And then I'm kind of seeing a smaller version of it grow back up. Because my mom and my sister started maid cleaning service. So now my sister's, she started a business at 17 too. And now she's 18, and, they're scaling and growing this business. So it's cool on my side to be able to talk to her, help her avoid some hard mistakes that him and I learned. But it's super cool. I always say go for it. You never know what's going to happen. Worst thing that happens is, especially if it's your family, they're your family. They're your family there. And family gets mad at each other, but they never leave. So
that's absolutely spectacular, my friend. That is, it's a nice level-headed, kind of response and kind of look at things. There's a lot of optimism and a lot of hope in kind of everything you say. Just go for it and see if you kind of learn from it. Caleb, coming into this, we didn't really get a chance to kind of plan it all out. It was a last minute filming like that. And it was phenomenal. So thank you so much once again for kind of stepping in last minute and really providing a unique perspective as someone that is in business with a family member, made it at a time in their life where a lot of decisions that people made at 17 do not work out as well as yours has, my friend. So congratulations on your success. I wish you more down the line. And I think you're pretty good at this podcasting thing as well. I think you're pretty good as a guest and maybe a little hosting as well. So maybe your dad takes a couple reps off. You can be a guest host over on J&E sometimes. Yeah,
maybe so.
Awesome. Well, Caleb Walker was my guest today. Thank you all for tuning in. Every Thursday, we're doing some live chats. Next couple Thursdays, we got some great guests coming up that are booked. We really appreciate it. For those that are watching this in our NiceJob Heroes user group, one little update that you will see, we will start debuting these on our regular NiceJob channel. However, we're going to have some pre-Q&A opportunities for those here in the exclusive group. So you'll still get some exclusive access to all that, but look forward to it. And if you haven't subscribed, either it's Apple Podcast, Stitcher or anything like that, go ahead and do so as well. Some of the guests we have coming out, you want to make sure that you see that notification right away, and on YouTube as well, the video copy. So if you want to see what Caleb and I look like as we put together this conversation without any planning, you get a chance to do that on YouTube as well. Caleb, thank you once again. Have a great rest of the day, and really appreciate the time, my friend.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me on. It was a blast.
All right, we'll see you all next time on Nice Job at Live Chats. Be sure you're staying safe, staying healthy, and have a little fun out there.